Okay. I think that we are live once again. Okay, so in our last episode, which was just a few hours ago, I ran into the problem that, well, first of all, I'm working on a search bar here. That's what I'm working on right now. I ran into the problem that the icon here doesn't look very good. I mean, it doesn't look very good because I drew it, but also it doesn't look very good because when we start the game, it just displays so rough. Look at that. Look at how like weirdly grainy and tiny it is. And yeah, I'm not actually totally sure how it looks so bad in the game when, I mean, look at that. It's high res. High res when I scroll in, high res when I scroll out. It just looks bad in the game. So I'm thinking some kind of texture problem I need to solve. Which, yeah, let's figure out. Now, okay, I've got two things that I want to kind of address from here. One is to fix that texture issue, which I've done like some. I want to say Google searching. I'm actually DuckDuckGo searching, but you know what I mean. Google searching to try to figure out why my textures don't look right, and it hasn't really come up with anything yet. And that's probably something I'm gonna have to figure out because I like want things to look crisp. I mean, you know, I at some point I'm going to draw assets and include them in the game, and I want them to like look proper when I include them in the game. That's kind of a big deal. So, but I mean, okay. Alt solution here is I could just replace this with like an SVG. Like this drawing is very simple, and I could drag it into like live trace and get a path out of that, make it into something that's a vector, and then I don't have to worry about it scaling in an ugly way. So that's maybe one potential solution here. Another thing that I should consider is like, well, okay, not something that I should consider, something I definitely plan to do is that the whole idea of this search bar is the idea that you like type your search here and then you press the button, and that'll trigger the search. But the part of the thing I want to do is like it doesn't really make sense to have search with a button. I don't think you can just type in your search and have it automatically perform your search as you type. That's a smoother UI. I think maybe the button is needless, and so I'd say if the button is needless, why am I worrying so much about how the icon looks? But if I would just move the icon over here so that you know that this is a search bar. So I still need to be able to render the icon in a way that isn't ugly. So I was thinking one place to start might be to just take this search icon here in the main window, and we'll drag it in here, and then we'll drag in like a smaller version of it. I just want to look at this at like a few different sizes. Let's see if I can understand the scaling behavior of this a little better. Because like this looks good. Here this looks good. And I put this together at a pretty high resolution. This is what, like 200 by 200, which is, I mean, it looks a little fuzzy at this size. The 200 by 200 wasn't really intended to be this big, but like, that looks good, and it looks good when I scale in and out. So when I boot up the game, run project, this looks good, and this looks worse, and this looks quite bad. And so, why is there such a difference between the two rendering contexts here? I mean, like this is in the game and this isn't, but well, struggling to understand how that works. So I feel like the answer might be somewhere in the project settings. Here we have the renderer. GL compatibility is kind of an old renderer. Maybe that's a contributor here. Yeah, so part of the reason I'm doing this so late at night is because that's when I get most of my personal code coded. And it's the time I have to myself. But also it's because it's a time when there's very little threat of anyone actually watching my stream, which is, important for my psychological safety. Anti-aliasing. This feels like it could be a place that I want to look at a little bit, because, I mean, it sort of defines the fuzziness around the outside of things. I turned on anti-aliasing here. I don't think it helped. Turn it off and see if it's any better, but I don't think it was better. I think it was worse with no anti-aliasing. I'll turn that off, we'll run the game again. And it looks about the same. It might even look a little better. No, I don't think that made any significant change here. So I think that didn't affect this at all. Might as well toss. I'm gonna toss an even smaller search bar in here. I want this to look like all the different ways it can look. See, that looks kind of bad even in this mode, which, I mean, that's kind of to be expected. Oh, what? Can I just not touch it anymore? I've made it too small to touch. Come on, bud. You could do it. See, that still looks pretty good in this window. See, and it looks just dog shit here. And, okay, so here we have, we're operating at double the effective viewport size. This is 895 by 1940. Go to project settings, and I go to my window display, and this is half that, well, kind of half that. All of this seems fine to me. Type scale. Yeah, we've seen that. Anti-aliasing. Screen space roughness limiter. What's that? Let's find out what that means. Okay, so I'm gonna grab a Firefox window. Godot, screen space roughness. What's this do? Yeah, the first thing is someone complaining about it. And here are some 3D scenes that aren't really important to me. Seems to be in the topic of 3D anti-aliasing, which is not important to me. All this stuff is for 3D, not 2D, right? I don't think that's meaningful. Scaling 3D, again, doesn't seem meaningful. 2D rendering. Okay, there's a 50% scale. I'm gonna set that to 100% scale. Let's close that and see what happens. This is 2D scale. Does that look better? I'm not sure if that does. Let's go back to the thing we were initially looking at. Let's open this page. No, see, that still looks really bad. No, I think equivalently bad. I don't think that's changed anything. So, okay, this scale was at 50%, and changing it didn't change anything. Well, that's all the stuff that has to do with scale. Texture. Output compression, that's not really what I'm interested in. Okay, I'm gonna I think I might go to a last resort friend of mine, which is, of course, ChatGPT. Okay, so I'm using Godot 4, and I have a 200 by 200 texture loaded in my application. In the Godot window, it looks smooth and high res, no matter what how I scale it up and down. But when I boot up the game, it looks jagged and awful when it's small. What am I doing wrong? I don't like that this is part of my workflow now, but sometimes it is. And this question is just like too long and detailed to actually be able to type into a search bar and have it return anything. And I gave this a couple of shots on DuckDuckGo. I got nowhere. Texture import filtering setting mismatch between what editor shows and what the game is using. Nearest neighbor, jaggy scaling, or no MipMaps if the import or project settings say so. Okay, so check the texture's import settings. Okay, we want filter on, MipMaps on, re-import. Okay, well, let's take a look at that. Open the search ping. And the import tab. There's an import tab. And where might the import tab be? Re-import. That's not an import tab, but I guess that's a way to re-import something. Is there such a thing as an import tab? Is this just a hallucination? Global 2D texture filter. Project settings. Rendering textures, canvas textures. I know there's a rendering in here. Rendering, textures, canvas textures, default texture filter. We want it linear. Yeah, that's set the way it should be. What's the difference between linear and linear MipMap? Well, I'll ask that next. I mean, I've looked in here already. I don't think I've seen an import window. No MipMaps. Is this the MipMap where it should be? Resource. Filter property. No, this just filters the properties that I can see down here. The import tab is at the top of the inspector. That's what it's telling me. Here we go. Oh, there's an import tab. Jeez, I've been missing that the whole time. Okay. MipMaps generate on? If filter is off, scaling will look very jaggy. Mode lossless. Well, that seems fine. It is lossless. It's a roughness. Mode detect. Okay, I think it's possible that ChatGPT has indicated a feature that doesn't exist, because I'm not sure if I see one of these called filter. Got me this far, but it didn't. We can't go any further. What are MipMaps, and why would I want to generate them? Okay, I'm gonna ask, what are MipMaps? why would I want to generate them? Pre-shrunk versions of your texture generated automatically so that when the game draws the texture at a smaller size, it uses the appropriately sized version instead of trying to shrink the full resolution image on the fly. Okay, so if you have a 200 by 200 image, then it'll generate smaller MipMaps as necessary and store them inside the texture. So you don't want to use MipMaps if you're doing pixel art because, well, pixel art has it's just its own rules for imports. But if you want smooth textures, you generally want MipMaps to make things look smooth when they're scaled down. So if I were to click Generate MipMaps here, with no limit, generate as many MipMaps as you need and re-import it. Maybe this will look smooth now when or not, maybe it'll look nicer when I make it small. Run current scene. It still looks bad though. Look at that. It looks terrible. Looks all chunky and stuff. The MipMaps didn't help. It does seem like MipMaps are something I should have turned on for these textures though. If I go into the project settings, I have found a MipMap default texture filter. Linear MipMap? That seems like a thing that I might want set. Maybe I should ask what that means. And again, I'd love to... The Godot documentation is often very unhelpful at describing how these things work, but... okay. Yeah, I've got 3D anti-aliasing documentation page opening. That didn't help me at all. Okay. We are just gonna straight up do the thing I'm doing. Why? Okay. In the project settings, I can choose linear or linear MipMap as the default texture filter. It sounds like MipMaps are the obvious choice for non-pixel art applications, especially on projects that might start with high DPI assets and then scale down as necessary. Should I set that to linear MipMap? So we want linear MipMap. Yes, if your project is not pixel art, linear MipMap is almost always the correct default. So you would get linear filtering plus MipMaps by default. Yeah, if you want crisp per pixel edges, you want nearest neighbor and not MipMaps, I think. Which, I mean, honestly, you know, Godot usually well, a lot of people using Godot for 2D are going for a pixel workflow, so I can see why this maybe isn't set by default. But that does seem like a good solid default if what you're doing is trying to get just smooth looking assets. Okay, so that is set. And again, I'm pretty sure this isn't going to look good still. Well, you know what? That is better. Like, it is much smoother looking than it looked the last time I loaded this. It's still not good, but it's not good in kind of a way I might expect if you just take a big asset and make it small without, you know, drawing the asset at the right size for that. Honestly, that might be the best I can expect. I maybe just need to draw a thicker asset for that. Which, I mean, that's not the end of the world. What if I just draw a smaller asset that fits in that space a little bit? I mean, like... Okay, I think that's what we're going to do. We're going to replace that with a chunkier asset, something that'll display a little better. So we're going to swap over to here. Look at this. Look at this. I mean, obviously I drew it way too big because that was just a first crack at it. Let's make something a little smaller. Where's my pen at? There's a pen. Okay, so the way I did it this time was I started to get the alignment right. I started with a line. So let's have another line. Like that. Needs to be smaller. But still legible. Still legible is the goal here. And go like, what is the laziest little search symbol we can have? It's got to be kind of, I don't know. Everyone knows search is a magnifying glass. It's a law of the universe. It seems kind of like a visible magnifying glass. It's not quite as. That's again. It's a min-spec magnifying glass. What more do you need? Is that still going to be legible? Let's zoom out to 100% here. That looks okay. I feel like I can tell that's a magnifying glass. I'll make that much smaller. I can. You know what? I'm going to go even smaller. We're going to take the size of the brush down maybe 2 notches. And I'm going to do it again. Even teenier. Come on. There we go. That's not a very good circle. I'll do a few more. Crack out some magnifying glasses. You know, it's funny because I was talking earlier about how this is developer art, so it doesn't really matter if it looks good, because, you know, it's just going to go in the game and be replaced by something better later on. And yet, you still got to take pride in your work, and you still got to make sure that it, like... I mean, I want to understand how to make things look good, and the only way to train in that is to try to make things look as good as you can, even with developer art. Okay, let's crop that. Get rid of the background and save it as search_smooth. Oh, come on. Letters are free. I can call it search small. We're not search_smooth. What am I? What kind of chump doesn't use the whole word? Not this chump. Okay, that's saved. Back to the mid screen. Our game running. We're going to turn that off for a second. We got our icon search here. Let's drop the search small into that folder. Kersplam. Search and small. Okay, so then we're going to take this, we're going to replace it with little guy. Come on. Okay, we're still at the import window. The import of MipMaps on, I guess. Okay, scene, search bar. We go into the search bar, we grab this texture rect, and we replace the search with a search small. Oh, what? No, that just dropped a whole new one. That's not what I want. Texture rect. This texture. You go in here. Now it's a smaller one. That might look better. And it does look a little better. Maybe it needs to be a touch bigger too. Let's grab this button, the margin container. I know we set the margins pretty generous here. Let's set the 5, 5, 5, and 5. Okay, so that's a bigger button, a little more legible. We'll look at it. And that's okay. Still a little fuzzy, but I'm much happier with where that is now than where it was when I started. Okay. I'm going to Project B, which I don't actually think this needs to be a button. I think that what we need here is to move the icon into the search window and remove the button entirely. Which, all this effort it took to get this texture rect inside this button, and now I'm not even going to keep it there. Yeah, isn't that awful? Okay, so then we want the texture rect to live inside the line edit. And this button is going to go away entirely. Okay, there it is. And this texture rect, it seems like it's kind of already where I want it to be. That's weird. That feels wrong. How is this texture rect already living where I want it to? Can I just like pop it over here and just trust it'll be there? That seems too easy. That can't honestly be. Maybe that's just honestly how that's going to work. Okay, I'm gonna save that. At some point, I'm gonna have to check this into source control because, like, I do feel like I've made some progress here. Look at this. It's a search bar. You could use it to search for a bar. Okay, that is a proper copper coffee pot. A proper search bar. Look at that. I feel like I could type in a thing and it would search here for it. I am typing a thing. You know, honestly, the text, this all looks kind of weirdly low res. I don't really know why it feels like that. Waka waka. Okay, that's there. Oh, I'm gonna stretch a little bit. Okay. The next thing we're gonna need is we're gonna need to trigger a search event when we type some stuff into this bar. And that should live in the search bar. Community Finder is going to need like stuff that happens after we trigger the search event, but for now we're going to start with the search bar here. And so the search bar should have a script associated with it. Build a scenes, components has a search bar. Okay, this is a little like procedural note. I haven't quite figured out how I want it to stand yet, which is that either I could have scripts with the components in it that matches the scenes, so I might have like scripts component search bar, or scenes component search bar and then scenes component search bar. The script would like live right next to it here. The question is, should I have separate scripts and scenes, or should I have them together? And then if I have them together, should they be in a folder? That's kind of nice and tight to have them like search bar in a folder with the scene and the GD together. I don't know. Let's do it that way. In my experience, it's better to keep the stuff for a thing kind of close together. I mean, like separating scenes and scripts at the top level is satisfying at first because you're like, all of my scenes are here, all of my scripts are here. But generally, when you're working on a scene and a script, you're working on them together. I mean, it almost might make sense to keep the assets with the component because, like, but you want to use the assets. I might want to use this icon again outside of the context of this component. So maybe the assets just live in an icons directory, and that's fine. But the component inside this components directory, I'm going to create a new folder. We're going to call it search bar. But then it's not really at this point, it's not a scene anymore, so it shouldn't live in scenes. It's just figuring out how directories should be laid out is like one of the hardest problems in computing. Okay, search bar goes in search bar. I'm going to create a new script. It inherits from, maybe we'll just create the new script from here, because that way I don't have to figure out proper inheritance. Attach a new script. I'm going to put it in scenes. Layouts, community finder. Oh, I'm in community finder. I don't want that. I want search bar. Here's where I should make the script. Scenes, component, search bar.gd. That's kind of where I want that, actually. Inherits control. That's what I want to inherit from. GD script. As much as I know .NET, I actually find GD script very pleasant to write in. I don't need .NET. I don't need your stinking .NET. Plus, what's the performance implication of using GD script here? I mean, it's just a UI. You know, like trying to spawn tens of thousands of objects in the same scene. Anyways, I'm going off on a digression. Okay, so this can live here. This is a combined component, but then it doesn't make sense to have this in a scenes folder anymore. In fact, the scenes folder might not make sense. Components and layouts should just live at the top level. So we'll pop them out here to the top. We got components, we got layouts, and we got character, which is kind of its own thing. We'll figure that out later. We'll get rid of this scenes folder. Delete. Remove. And as for scripts, we've got layout and threefold, and so threefold lives out here, but that's also, it's kind of a component. I was working on something called threefold that I could show it off, but I don't want to because it doesn't work as well as I want it to. New folder, threefold, we'll just stuff it in here and ignore it forever. And you live here in the components that I don't think I'm going to need to use because I don't think they're terribly good. It was my first attempt to do some UI code. I don't know why I'm still keeping it around. I guess just in case I decide it becomes useful at some point. It's not a good way to organize code bases. Just garbage code sitting around. Anyways, dev art layouts. The thing is I kind of want to separate like art and structure. So even if I don't have them in a script, maybe they all belong in the scenes? Because I don't know. Once again, dev art and theme kind of feel like they conceptually belong together. And layouts and components feel like they go together. Maybe this is a UI folder? UI. In the UI lives... All of this really is UI though. I mean, we haven't even started looking at game yet. And yet, okay, we're working in UI. It all goes in a UI folder. Me just quibbling and quibbling and quibbling over directory layout here is going to be just a major theme, I think. Okay. UI components. UI is going to have components and layouts. And theme. Yeah. And scripts is going to have nothing. We're going to get rid of this. Delete. Remove. And dev art can be its own thing, but icons can live in dev art. Even if icons are part of theme, I think we're going to keep all the assets in dev art for now. Okay. Components, I like this. This is starting to feel a little tighter. Fonts live in theme. Yeah, actually, that does feel right. They're kind of assets, but they're also important. I mean, we're never going to use them outside of theme. Hopefully, if I'm doing theme right. Okay, so now we've got... We've waffled a little bit, but our search bar has a script associated with it that doesn't do anything. And what we want to do is when someone types into this, we want to trigger a search. Not quite, but well, we'll get to the details of that in a sec. So let's crack open... we could shut down my blog. I wrote a gigantic blog post about Sunderfolk, which I'm happy about, but it's not really relevant to what we're doing here. I'm going to shut down the blog for a little while. Not really updating that while I'm doing this. Instead, it's complaining that I moved threefold, which I absolutely did. Okay, we got a nice UI, and then the layout of the component that I just made is search bar. We got our search bar.gd, and it doesn't do anything yet. And I think the way to start making it do something would be to find the event that's fired off when it when someone types into it. Which, if I click on node here, it'll show me all the signals. And text change feels like the bad boy here. Text submitted. Okay, so change is when you change the text, and submitted is when you press the you press enter. And I think enter should trigger a search immediately, but a change should slow roll a search. Yeah, that feels good. So, what's a change rejected? Oh, if there's a max length and you go over it. Oh, there's a max length here? That makes sense. Max length. Oh, it's just set to 0, so there's no actual max length. I suppose, we don't want people putting the B movie in here, so I'll just set that to 100. If you're searching for something with more than 100 characters, instead don't, and reconsider your life. Okay, well, these are some lovely... it's one of the things about, CSS JavaScript is you don't just get to see all of the events lined up for you like this. It's kind of nice. We mostly are not interested in the canvas item, node, or object ones. It's like the control and the line edit specifically, and then these are the ones that are most relevant. And it does feel like text change and text submitted are the two big boys. So let's add that to the search bar code. So advanced. Oh, I just need online text connect. It's been connected. Oh, and I love that you can see all the things it's connected to. Isn't that fun? Okay, so text submitted and text changed. Okay, and now we get to write some code. That's my favorite part. I love writing code. Okay. Of course it doesn't. It's complaining that it doesn't do anything? Yeah. And it tells you what the text is. That's lovely. So the thing is, what I want, I think, this to do, I want the search bar to emit an event, a signal that's just like, do a search. So, signal, do a search? I forgot the syntax for making a signal. Unfortunately, Google Copilot is here to help me out. Emit a signal that triggers a search with the given query. There we go. Search requested. Query string. Thanks, Copilot. God, I don't feel like a coder anymore with this fucking Copilot. Okay, that is what I wanted. Signal, search requested, query. That's it. When we submit the text, we should just search. We request the search right away because it's like that's you pressed enter. That's the whole thing. But for when you're just editing the text, I think when you're doing that, you should start a timer. And if it gets to the end of the timer and you haven't entered any new characters, then it should request a search. But if you have but if you enter another character, it should restart the timer. You should only start search once you get to the end of that timer. It's like a debounce. So, I mean, I swear to God, if I just type debounce the text change with a timer, and then, oh, thank God it didn't write it for me. That would have been a little frustrating. Let's create a global timer that, well, not global, but like global within this function. So we're going to go, yeah, exactly. God damn it, you are kind of doing it for me. Okay. Okay, on debounce timeout, edit chat. Oh, it did it all for me. I just, but where's the fun? Where's the fun? Okay, so this should trigger the timer. Start the timer. Restart the timer, yeah. And then, yeah, that's it. Okay, so what's the complaint here? It's not using the text? Yeah, that's right. I give it an underscore so that it knows that we're not intending to use that, but it's there if we need it. And so that we can see that the search request event, what I'm gonna do, it's not console.log, it's just print, right? Oh yeah, that's just new text. Okay, we're doing print debugging, doing it live. So, I understand how this works. Thank you, computer, for doing it for me, which is frustrating, and it makes it harder to follow what I'm doing. But we've got our two signals here, and the obvious one is when edit text is submitted. So when someone types in some text and hits enter, we're just gonna take that and pass it along. We're gonna admit a search requested with the text that's in the box. That one's very simple. But when the text is changed, which means they typed in something and they didn't press enter, we start a timer. And if we get to the end of the timer, then we emit the signal with the text in it. But if we type in another letter, we'll start the timer again. And I think this should reset the timer every time we hit it. So every time you type in, it'll start the timer again. This seems like it should be configurable. This seems like it should be a configurable, like how long are we waiting? It feels like it should be a configurable property of the search bar. But for now, it's half a millisecond, right? Or sorry, half a second. 500 milliseconds, not half a millisecond. That would be way too fast. But half a second feels about right. Again, this stupid Copilot has come up with the right answer without me having to fuss with it. But like, we might want to make that configurable, but we're not going to do that quite yet. first we're just gonna test it out. Yeah, okay, they're complaining, but if I were to save this, go to the community finder, no, I'll just do it right from the search bar. Run the current scene, and I'm gonna drag this over to the side. We're gonna type into it and see what comes up in the console. I'll watch the console and see what happens when I type in pants. It breaks! Lovely, okay. Search bar 25. Back to the code. Invalid access to property of key text on a base object of type null instance. So here, line edit doesn't exist. It's never heard of line edit. What's a line edit? You say there's a line edit, I've never seen one. Because line edit's contained within HBox container. See, this is one of those things where it's like, sometimes Copilot doesn't know the entire context of the code, but here, I mean, the autocomplete from the Godot helper knows that actually you want HBox container line edit. Because, I mean, if you look here, it's search bar, HBox container line edit, so the to get to line edit from search bar, you go here. Although, I mean, there's probably a way to do that more cleanly, but this seems like it does the trick. It's all contained within the thing. Okay, so we saved that, we fixed it. I'm gonna shut this down and start again. Hats. There we go, search for hats. So if I type in potato and enter, it's just gonna direct search for enter, but then it's still gonna debounce search for enter, which actually is not what I want, because you'll notice I direct search for potato, but then also it debounced to search for potato. And I think that means that direct search should cancel any debounce search that's lined up. But if I were to just type in potat and stop, it'll realize that's what I was searching for. It'll wait 500 milliseconds, and then, which, I mean, it's an almost unnoticeable amount of time. Maybe I should set it to be a little longer. Again, that's why I should make it configurable, right? Okay, so we've got a goal here, and that goal is to take the search bar and make it so that when we direct, so this is edit text submitted, when we direct search, it should also cancel the timer. When we direct submit, we can cancel the timer because we've said out loud we're done by pressing enter. Just stop the timer. Easy peasy. That should do it. I also wanted to make this a configurable variable. You know what? I sort of remember how to do that. Sometimes my brain doesn't so, well, I don't know, it's just been a while since the last time I coded something with a configurable variable, because I haven't coded in Godot script for a while. Okay, so we are going to crack open the documentation. We're gonna go, I don't want to use ChatGPT for everything. It feels wasteful. Heat up the universe. DuckDuckGo. How do I make a variable editor configurable in Godot? I've done it 100 times before, but I've forgotten how to do it. Export, that's what it is. Okay. I'll just copy that little bit of example code. We are going to export var, not hit points, obviously. Oh, it's been removed in Godot 4. Okay, what do we use instead? At export? Okay. And we're gonna call it wait, debounce wait time seconds. And it's gonna default to 0.5. Yeah, a little longer, 0.75. Okay. Oh, wait. I mean, I set up the variable, but I didn't use it right. It's used right here. Yeah, you know what I want. You know what boys like. Debounces. Okay, we're reboot that. Now I have it just running over on a different monitor, which you can't see, but because I like to have things visible. So when I type into here Patat, it's going to debounce the search for Patat. But when I type in O and then press enter, it's going to direct search, but it's not going to debounce the search, which I want. Rotato. Direct search for Rotato, and if I just delete a few characters and let it sit for a second, it's going to debounce the search. So that's it. It does the thing we want it to. It's a search bar, and when we type into it, it waits a little while and then does the search. Or if you press enter, it immediately does the search. I've accomplished a small thing. I'm a little happy about that. When I feel like I've accomplished a thing, it brings us to the most important step in all of coding, which is to open Discord and brag about it to my friend. No, it's to save. Save state. Okay, because look at all this. Look at all these changes. I mean, that might even be too many changes for a single... Okay, we're going to stash a whole bunch of stuff. God, this is... Okay. If we were working on a more well-developed project, you obviously want to keep your changes to like one change per commit. You know, the idea of doing a whole bunch of work and then doing a save point makes a lot more sense when you're the only person at the beginning of a project, which is where I am now. But if I were working on a big project with a lot of people, there is no way I would do all of this stuff and like a bunch of different stuff all wrapped together in one big burrito change. Everyone else on the team would stab me. But you know, we're not, that's not how we're playing it. It's just me, and I just want a little save point here. I could call this save point. But no, what we've done here is actually introduce a search bar. We made a search bar. Yeah? Yeah. We're going to add all this stuff to the changes in this commit. And commit it. I'll sync those changes. Okay. That is just an enormously important step. And it's 2:13 in the morning. Honestly, I was... The next step here, I think, is to build an empty results window and then fill it with like stock data, like you know, the actual HTTP call will pretend it happens, and then just put some stuff in there, and then we can actually, like, once we've got the UI in place with just like a stub. Oh, then we would replace that with, you know, the actual HTTP request with real data. But that feels like it might be a tomorrow problem, because it's 2:13 in the morning, and honestly, I've still got like a little more caffeine in my system. I could keep going for another hour easily, but I have to stop coding at least an hour before bed, because otherwise I just don't sleep at all. So I think we've hit this save point, and we're just gonna call it for today. And I mean, I'm enjoying myself a great deal here, so I'll come back and do some more of this tomorrow. But yeah, well, I'm happy with where we're at. Okay. Yeah, I don't think. You know what? I'm just gonna quickly check and see if. Oh, I might even have a viewer right now. With a view duration of 16 minutes? That's incredible. I don't think anyone's ever watched one of my streams for so long. Thank you, stranger. Glad you stopped by and watched what I was doing. But yeah, I'm gonna call it a night and do some more tomorrow.